And if we are children of God, we ought to become like God. We ought to become colorblind. But there's only two classes of people in God's eyesight, saved souls and unsaved souls. And God is going somebody that to stand up and say, Lord, if you need somebody, here am I. I think he needs that. We need to have more of that Isaiah type spirit. You know, Lord, you need somebody, send me, I'll go. And this is what God would do for us, you know. And there is no vision without provision. We may not know where it's coming from, but some way and somehow, God is going to work it out. Let's look at the Bible. There's adoption went on in the Bible. Moses was an adopted child. Esther was an adopted child. Look at the country. Nothing new to God. It may be new to us. But one thing about it, he gave them a place. He gave them a home. He gave them love. He gave them a parent who raised them up.
Welcome to the Christian Citizen, part of the ministry of U.S. Pastor Council. We take head-on the mission of restoring godly citizenship as an effective ministry of the local Bible-believing pastor and church. Man calls it politics, but God calls it ministry, and our mission of, by, and for pastors is to bring a united biblical voice to the critical issues of our day. Scripture speaks to all issues impacting lives, and so should our pulpits. Join us for today's program. Well, hi, I'm Dave Welch, the host of the Christian Citizen Podcast and president of the Texas Pastor Council. And this podcast, its purpose is to restore the concept of godly citizenship as a functioning ministry of the local church. That means that as good Christians, we're also good citizens of this country. And that means that we participate in the community around us. We serve our communities. We reach outside the church walls. We bring God's truth and love and justice to the city, the county, the state, and that includes good governance. It also, of course, starts in the heart. So that's our functioning of bringing that message to the churches, our pastors, and engage together in a united voice. And so on today's podcast, one of the issues that we have addressed as a ministry often in the past, and it's an ongoing challenge in our country, is the real crisis of the foster care system. And there's many aspects to this problem. Number one, that there are children in it at all. And that's a sign itself of a problem in our society, whereas the family has crumbled and even collapsed in some ways, in some areas, and put children outside of a protected, safe home into the foster care system. What is the church to do about that? And of course, is adoption, where we can play for what we call forever homes for children that are in need of that. So one of the great stories of our time and one of the great ministries that has been on the forefront of this is a small little church in a place called Possum Trot, Texas. And I had a chance and a privilege to meet Bishop Martin several years ago, and the story became nationally known and recognized at that time for what they had done there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But this is a challenge to every church everywhere to do this and do more of reaching out to these kids in need. And this is now has been made into a feature film. And we're going to ask all of our churches to get our people out to this when it comes out. And we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. So let's go ahead and first take a quick look at this, and you'll see the power of this story.
We're on our way. Okay, I want you to hide. Are you still there?
The film is about a small community in East Texas where a small church felt called by God to start caring for vulnerable children.
Just ordinary people looking outside of themselves, seeing the need of mankind and meeting the need.
We want the ones that don't nobody else want.
And they ended up adopting 77 of some of the most difficult to place children in the Texas child welfare system.
22 families want to adopt. The whole town wants kids now.
That's about right.
When we got involved in the adoption process, we had no clue what was going on in this adoption arena.
I had to remove the kids because, it's our job to keep them safe. She gave me these.
And so what's going on in the nation right now is over 400,000 kids are in the foster system. Over 100,000 are waiting to be adopted, while we have over 400,000 local churches on every street corner sitting there lifting up the name of Jesus while this is happening under our nose.
But if we can't wrap our arms around the most vulnerable amongst us, then what do we have? Noise! Noise. And the children can't take the noise anymore.
And how do we as a community, not only the church, but how do we rally everyone to step in for kids because they are the future.
For us to be able to see this come to fruition, this movie of their story and what it can compel other churches and other families to step forward and do the same, what this one little community can do. Imagine if all the churches around the world did the same. Would there be any kids in the foster care system, let alone available for adoption, if the church raised their themselves?
Now I know what happened. It's just not okay. And I feel like we need to show that. And I feel like we need to make it known that this is what's happening and we need to make it stop.
I just pray that something in this movie make your heart jump and you want to go out and be involved in the foster care crisis, because people like you are people who change the world. And if you feel that tugging at your heart, don't ignore it, go after it and do something.
I think the ultimate thing that I take from this is you're never so small that you can't make a difference. Like, it's just extraordinary to me what we can do if we decide we're going to make things better.
I never seen you so scared. Is he speaking to you? Is he speaking?
Well, I can tell you that the first time I saw that, folks, it brought tears to my eyes. Still chokes me up. Because when we realize that the number of children out there desperately waiting to be loved and have an opportunity to be in a stable home, it's breathtaking. And what we do know is that this is a core fundamental role of what we call pure religion, is what Scripture says, as we understand that. And we're all familiar with it. It's out there. There's a need there, but it's kind of a distant. But in recent years, when there's things have hit the headlines, stories about the crisis of dysfunction in the foster care system, of things like children sleeping not just overnight, but sometimes days or even weeks in a foster care office because there's nowhere to put them. The average child that goes into the foster care system being in 14 different homes by the time they age out. Then when they age out, often there they are, nothing they don't have family to fall back on, and they're out of the system. What happens then? There's just so many questions around this that there's a place for the church to be. And as you just saw, this is a real story of a real church led by a real pastor with a heart for kids and for his people. And I want to just bring in Bishop W.C. Martin from Possum Trot, Texas. You saw that this story is his story. And Bishop, I just want to commend you and honor you for just obeying the Lord and overall circumstances. I mean, did you have any idea when you stepped forward to move down this path of adoption and foster where it was going to lead?
I had no idea whatsoever that it was going to come to this magnitude, because the one thing that I always understood, that we have always taken care of our children. And it was one of the things that homes did in small areas and large and small communities, especially in the rural areas. People always came together in raising and bringing their children together and doing things together. And some kind of way, the squeeze between where we used to be and where we are today has really devastated a lot of children and a lot of homes, because no one seemed to have a heart and no one seemed to care anymore. And those are our children. Caring for this, you have to understand that it's not the color of a child to me. Children are children. And if we are children of God, we ought to become like God. We ought to become colorblind. But there's only two classes of people in our God's eyesight: saved souls and unsaved souls. So we have to be like God and see things out of the eyes of God. And James 1:27 really opened up this thing to us to let us know just where we are. James 1:27 said, pure religion is undefiled, that God accepts, that we take care of the widows and the orphanage. And I think that God got an indictment against the church because we have not done due benevolence to either one of them. So we have to wake up now and see what's going on. Instead of fighting each other, why don't we just join together and bring a child and get a child where we can love on that child and teach that child about Jesus and the love of God and how God died for their sins, was resurrected in order for us to have a freedom of living. And we are constantly fighting each other over nitpick things. And our country is going into a war of unnecessary things. It's time now for this entire country to wake up. And let's focus on the children. I know you remember the story when Jesus picked up that little girl, that little boy, whatever it was, and said, suffer the children to come unto me and forbid them not. See, what he's simply saying is that the closest a lot of us going to get to heaven is through those children. So we cannot overlook the fact that it's not God's intention for these children to be in a place of solitary where they do not have the ability to love and the ability to understand what life is really all about. I never thought that it was going to get to this. I thought we were just doing something that people do, take care of children. I didn't have no idea. But here we are right now in 2024. In another couple of 2 or 3 months, we're going to be able to see Possum Trot on the big screen. And that's something, and don't get me wrong, I'm very, very excited about this, very excited about it. But at the same token, I owe myself no props. I give all the glory and honor to God because it was Him that did that. He's letting us know that He can come to a small place I'm so excited about.
You know, that is so true. And that's such an important point because often we'll look at things from a standpoint of our typical resource assessment. Well, do I have the time? Do I have the resources? Do I have the will, the interest? And we'll measure and weigh everything. And that's not a bad thing. We're to count the costs. But there's some things that we're called just to do and obey. And regardless of that, and step out in faith and in trust. And when it comes down to the caring for children in particular, and the vulnerable and the hurting, then that's something that is an act of Christ that speaks just directly to His heart. And you did that, and you stepped out on that. And now this story first it was put into a book, isn't that correct? And then that book got national attention, and you're on national news program.
Well, how it all got started is that I think we had a program at the church one Sunday, and we met with people at CPS. And I believe that there was one of them that was in that group called the Houston Chronicle, and told the Houston Chronicles, I got a hot tip story for you. I got a little small church way back in the woods that's adopting a lot of children. And it just blew up from there. That I think it came out like on a Monday morning. And then when it came out, we got a call from Diane Sawyer, Good Morning America. And it just went on from that. And then later on, I had a meeting with Focus on the Family. And I met with them, and I told them, I said, you got something I want, I got something you want. I said, I know if I go in a place that you create a venue, I go and speak to that place, you're going to get results. I want a book out. So when they met and got agreed, they had 100% said, let's do the book. So the name of the book is Small Town Big Miracle. You can get that book online. But this story here takes on a different twist. This movie going to really, really take on a different twist, that they're going to show the more in-depth of what's going on. The book's only skim the surface of it, but this movie coming, it's going to go to the in-depth of it, to the heart. And they show you the heart of the children and the heart of the people who really adopted children, and the provision that they had to go through and the thing they had to go through in order to get them in their home. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit up here and say it's easy. But you know what? I found out in life that nothing is easy. Pastor Wells, ain't nothing easy. It's like, I had a hard time getting up out of the bed this morning. It's just nothing easy in this world. So whatever you do now, you got to work for it, you got to pray about it, you got to seek God on it, and you got to move forward. But I believe that what we are right now, that every church in this nation can be like a Possum Trot or like a Bennett Chapel in Possum Trot. It's not the size. It's not the size, how big the church is. It ain't have nothing. It's not where your local, your demographical area is, nothing like that. Only thing God is going somebody that to stand up and say, Lord, if you need somebody, here am I. I think He needs that. We need to have more of that Isaiah type spirit. Lord, you need somebody, send me, I'll go. And this is what God would do for us, And there is no vision without provision. We may not know where it's coming from, but some way and somehow God is going to work it out.
Amen to that. That's so true. One of the things that we've said here, when the Houston Area Pastor Council team had to confront the city leadership here in previous years, one of the things we found, and that kind of became our theme, was that no church was so large that it could do the work by itself in a city. And no church was so small that it didn't have a voice when they work together. And that's the key. That's really been the key component that we've charged with, and the whole concept of there is only one church in the city. And there should be, as you said so clearly, there's only two classes and categories of people ultimately. Those that are the saved and those that are the unsaved. And in the church, in the city, any city, there's only one church. We just don't like it that way very often.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the power of churches coming together. Even just a single church, as you've shown, bringing that commitment to bear, to say whatever the cost is. And even a movie like this, which is going to be, I can tell you folks, just from the trailer, as you saw, It's moving. It touches your heart just in those couple minutes. When this movie comes out, I promise you, the lives will be changed. But even the movie can only tell so much. We understand the real life investment by the families in this church and Bishop Martin and his family is so much more immeasurable that it really is immeasurable. And tell us a little bit about that, the process of bringing kids in and getting them into new homes and new environments and this kind of a number for your church. How did that affect your church?
Well, it affected the church. It affected people's lives so much in so many different ways. For one thing, it's going to bring you out of your comfort zone. It's going to let you know then that, hey, look, although I did not plant the seeds for this child to come in this world, but at the same token, I think that I can be a support and a help to bringing this child up. There's a book that came out some years ago that said it takes a village to raise a child. Because when people get on one accord, we look for excuses not to do, but we need to start looking for a reason to do. The Bible teaches us that if I'm for you, I'm more than a whole world against you. As long as I know that the Lord is on my side, I believe that there's nothing that cannot be done. Yes, they'll pack so many different. They'll pack your home in line and stealing and just doing a whole lot of stuff. And you have to literally be a policeman. And first thing people hear this, they say, well, I'm not going to bring them little bad children into my home. Well, let's examine that little statement right there. I come to find out that we talk about how bad they are, but the one we have that we brought in this world is bad. So we cannot stereotype these. They talk about how bad they are. We have bad children everywhere. I was bad. I mean, all of us was bad once upon a time. We've done some stuff that we ain't had no business done. We disobeyed our parents. We went out there and doing in the country we call it rabbit tobacco. They got some stuff out there. We smoked on the rabbit tobacco. We got some of all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, as your life began to grow, you began to change. You began to wove into those areas of your life that God intended for you to be. And if God be for you, you also see. So they do a lot of crazy stuff. Those are young children. You expect for them to do stuff. It's no perfect child nowhere. I don't care where you go. There is no perfect children. You can look and try to make them perfect. You can talk to them, but when you turn your back, they're going to do some stuff that you ain't never thought they were capable of doing. And there's no perfect children. So I think that we need to just change our whole concept about this and start beginning to look at a child as being a child that God has allowed in this world. And if God brought him in this world, that child has purpose in their life. But that purpose needs to be cultivated. Somebody needs to help that child to understand what life is all about. Because just like you and I didn't know, somebody had to cultivate our lives. Then the same thing you do with them. I bet you right now, the people that you talk to right now, a lot of them were raised by their grandparents or their aunties or something like that. And it's the same thing that adoption have always been. But it wasn't a formula. It's a formula adoption now because now everything else. But a lot of us were raised by our parents. I mean, good. Let's look at the Bible. There's adoption went on in the Bible. Moses was an adopted child. Esther was an adopted child. Look at the country. Nothing new to God. It may be new to us. But one thing about it, he gave them a place. He gave them a home. He gave them love. He gave them a parents who raised them up. So we looking at this thing. I don't want to preach on this line, but God gave us something that we can glean to and hold on to because in the beauty of him, I had one little incident that I shall never forget. I went to visit a little boy one time. He said, Bishop Martin, I just want to tell you. I said, man, what you want for Christmas? He said, I think about 7, 8 years old. He said, I don't want no little toys. I don't want no new school shoes. I don't want no school, no plans. I don't want any of that stuff. All I want is a mother and a father to love me. Is that too much for a child to ask for? And this is the thing that ought to grab our heartstrings and just let us know we got what to do. We cannot sit around here no more and look and think things going to happen. We're going to have to roll up our sleeve. I was reading a scripture the other day. I think it's Romans 13. And it said it's high time that we wake up out of our sleep. Our salvation is nearer than when we've been. It's time now for us to wake up and finish this job. God is calling for the church that he ordained. The system was not ordained by God. The system is not the thing that God ordained. The system is a part of it, but the only the church was ordained by God to carry out the commandments of God. So, Pastor, right now, it's time for the church to wake up and take this by force and let the enemy know these are our children. I don't care if they're green, yellow, purple, black, it doesn't matter. These are children of God that the church needs to be involved in. You got to stop me because I keep on running my mouth. I can't stop.
Well, that's why God raised you up for this moment in this hour, Bishop, because your passion is self-evident. And, you know, it is. This is something placed squarely on the charge of the church, not the state. We have allowed the state to be involved in so many things in this country. It was never part of God's purpose for the government. And caring for children is one of them. It's one of the utmost. This ought to be something where we ought to empty the foster care system overnight practically. In Texas, the number, I think, averages about 30 to 35,000 children in the foster care system at a given point in time, typically about 2/3 of which are foster, and there's usually about 1/3 or less that are eligible for adoption. But that's constant, and this is part of where our charge really is to be there. And there's so many dynamics to this, isn't it, Bishop? Because one of the things that this talks about at the beginning of the movie, we've heard this statistic from law enforcement that this catastrophe of modern human trafficking that's going on all around us. And of course, here in Houston, Harris County area, where it's known to be the hub, essentially, of this for the country, that 60 to 90% of the human trafficking victims come right out of the foster care system. People think it's all coming across the border. It's not. And it's, again, these kids are vulnerable. They're easily manipulable. They're outright kidnapped. It's all the above. So there's so many elements. And for example, a number of years ago, we did a tour, if you will, and we brought pastors, mostly suburban pastors who had never been there, down to the juvenile detention facility in Houston. And with the compelling moment of that tour was after we'd gone through the floors, the kids were 10 to 17 years old in that facility. We asked the director, I asked the director at one point, unscripted, just if there's a common denominator, what is it, these children that come through here? And he didn't even miss a lick. He said, they have no family. And so here we go. This is a clarion call. Now, that doesn't absolve us of one of the things about the Pastor Council ministry is that our charge is to be on the front lines of justice. It's be on the front lines of compassion. And we can do both. We have to do both, which means when we raise up God's standard, first of all, it's the only solution to all problems. And that means what's God's plan of raising up children? It's called a man and a woman getting married, entering into that covenant, and then having children and raising those children within that covenant until the age of adulthood where they can then go out on their own. That's God's plan. Now, we have messed it up from the beginning of time, of course, and nothing works like God's plan. So, but here's the question for the church today. Are we pushing back toward that model? Are we saying, this is God's way, follow the way, because this avoids the brokenness, the hurt, the dysfunction, the pain that we go through when we don't follow God's plan. So that is still the order of the church for us to disciple our families, to disciple our children, to raise up and have stable homes and marriages and families. But that doesn't absolve us from the immediate crisis, the immediate need around us of all those who have not, especially in today's age, where the family has just imploded over the last 40, 50 years. So the children are paying the price. But this moment in this movie, I believe this is an epic moment that God has raised up this pastor and this church and this little city and this movie for this moment to be a turning point, even of bringing revival. Because as the church engages in this in a sweeping way across this country, and this particular issue, lives are going to be touched, communities transformed, and all the way from the personal level to even all elected officials and those within the system that see the church step up to what the church is supposed to do. So, Bishop, when is the movie supposed to come out?
The movie's coming out 4th of July. It'll be in all theaters at that moment. You also can go on the Angel Studio Network and get tickets now. The tickets at this point now is $5 a ticket. But at the same token, I think it's going to be for that day only. And I think that after that day, they're going to go on regular price. And I don't know what that's going to be. But you got a chance right now. And I encourage all churches. The hurting part about this, I'm a detour on one thing that you said. There's churches on every corner. I mean, everywhere you go, all kind of churches. And the problem is we got so many churches and we got so many talkers, but no walkers. We got people talking about the problem, but you sit down and ask yourself one question. What are you doing to help to get rid of this problem? 9 times out of 10, if a child is trained on the street that has been in the system all their life, they have no guidance, they have no wisdom and no understanding. If you stop that problem, you're going to stop this sex trafficking problem, because you're going to teach them the godly way of doing things, and they're going to have a better idea of what they need to do, just opposed to doing out there doing anything, and somebody just say, hey, come on around the corner with me. We got to do something about the problem, because what we're doing, and along with that problem, we're going to stop the killing, we're going to stop the robbery, and we're going to teach people that God is love the whole world. His love is not rest, ruled, and about. Nobody has the monopoly on God's love. He loved everybody. He died for the sins of the world. And when we understand that concept, we all know then that we all can have a seat with God in the kingdom. Because why? We are walking after his will, and we are denouncing the will of the enemy and doing the things that God told us to do. So I think if you stop this first problem, if that child never go in that system and remain in that church, I think you're going to see that a whole lot of problems is going to be erased. This is why the enemy is working so hard to keep them in the system, because he knows that the problem is going to keep swelling up, keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So now it has got to be a major issue. And what it is, so it got so big until even the people, even the officials don't know what to do anymore. They scratching their head. We don't know. But what else? It just got to be something done. We're going to have to stand up and give an account to God to say, Lord, I messed up. Show me what to do now. And this is what God wants us to do. He wants to just say, Lord, I messed it up. I'm sorry. Forgive me. And I believe that God will forgive us and show us his plan at this point of what we can do. And one of the things that I believe is rest ruled on this movie, Possum Trot. That's the name of it, Possum Trot. I believe that a lot of clues, a lot of information will be gathered from the movie, because people are going to actually have an opportunity to see the trauma that the children grow up in and the trauma that they got to deal with throughout their life. And if that don't do something in your heart, then I don't know what to say. You don't have the heart of God, because the heart of God is love. And if you don't have that love in your heart, then you don't have it. You just ain't got it. So, and I want to say this, everybody can adopt, but everybody can do something in this process.
And that's a great place to close, Bishop, because we're going to follow up on that later. There'll be other opportunities to tell people how you can do this, because it's, again, not everybody has to be a full-time foster parent or adopt. There's many different ways to reach out and be available. So we'll do another program on that alone, because, again, that's something we want to dig into the how. How do we do this to remove the stigma, remove the fear, and a lot of that. But Bishop, thank you for your ministry, all that you do. And we're going to be working with you to get this out to churches all over the state and the country to support this. And folks, this is not done without this ministry, and the work that they have done out there have not been without great cost and great expense too. So we're going to give you some ways to maybe help out there as well. So Bishop, thank you for your time. Thank you for your ministry. And we're excited about what God's got coming up next with this movie and ahead for you.
Thank you, and God bless you all, and praying that we will wake up and smell the coffee.
All right. God bless. Have a wonderful day.
God bless you now. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is one of our golden moments to step up to the plate. And there's a conference that's going to be held, a national conference called Chosen, hosted by Preston Wood Church in Plano, along with the U.S. Pastor Council and numbers of other ministries that are going to be participating in this on April 13th. You can go to Preston Wood's website. You can go to our website at uspastorcouncil.org. Find out more about that. We're inviting pastors from all over to come in, bring staff to learn how you can more effectively be involved in the foster and adoption ministries. So there's those things where we're working with our state leaders. How do we make the foster care system more family friendly, more faith family friendly? Some of the concerns about how do I get entangled with the state, or do I get entangled with the state if I bring in a foster care child? A lot of concerns about how we do this effectively. So there's things we can do on a public policy level to make our laws more friendly toward helping fostering becoming more available, adoption more accessible, maybe more affordable, and a lot of different ways we can do this. But our first call in proclaiming the gospel, proclaiming the word of God from our pulpits and our churches that changes lives, changes families, and changes futures starts as the first point of solution in all of this. Because somewhere, what we not only want to do is empty the foster care system of kids by putting them in homes, we want to cut off the supply system. What happens if all of a sudden the family turns and children are being born into and raised up in stable homes with a married mother and a father who love each other in a happy, healthy home? What would our society look like? That's the call of the church. So stay with us. Keep following the podcast. Pastors, we need you involved with the pastor council, starting a pastor council, preaching, teaching, leading your churches. God bless. As we conclude another enlightening episode of the Christian Citizen Podcast, we want to share a mission that resonates with our values. The U.S. Pastor Council, a beacon of courage, unity, and faith, is calling on you to partner with us. This pastor-led ministry, deeply rooted in biblical principles, aims to empower pastors and their congregations across racial and denominational lines to impact our culture and community through concerted prayer and effective action. Your support and donations can help us build strong, functioning teams of pastors in every corner of our cities, creating a grassroots network that could truly make a difference. Together, we can bring about Christ-centered change in our communities, provide resources for pastors, and connect with our leaders. This is more than just a donation. It's an opportunity to be part of a movement to answer a call that echoes across the plains of Texas and even coast to coast. It's a chance to unite under a common cause and make a real impact. So we urge you, our listeners, to donate today and join us in our mission to bring about true transformation. Together, we can answer the call. Visit us at uspastorcouncil.org. That's uspastorcouncil.org. Thank you for being a part of this journey.